Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, I just wanted to give you an update on my trip to Guatemala. It was profound and it was fun and I had a great time. And I just wanted to give a thank you to Simply Snacking and Sue. Just everyone loved it there. You know, I brought some snacks with me and packed them easily in my suitcase like you've been hearing me ramble about. But really, the joy that it brought people, they loved it. And I knew I was giving them some nutrition and they were really enjoying it. So I made a lot of friends thanks to Simply Snacking in Guatemala. And just wanted to give a shout out to Sue for making this possible, for sponsoring the podcast, and for providing a product that I can believe in that can help people. As a matter of fact, as an update, one of my patients who works for a big tech company said that they gave him responsibility for the break room, and now he has Simply Snacking and some very healthy low carb options for employees because everyone noticed they were gaining weight and feeling terrible and not as productive. So this is what our message is. I think we have a shared vision. I think, bringing healthy food to people and healthy lifestyle and helping people to cope in times of difficulty. So again, Simply Snacking, thank you for sponsoring us here. Thank you for helping me to get these messages out. And there's so many great ones coming that I'm excited about, but we greatly appreciate your support. And thank you for making a product that we can stand behind and really believe in, and I can pack lightly and take it with me wherever I go. So thank you very much. Have a great day. And thank you for listening to this episode. Hello and welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. I'm really excited about this one. This is one of my heroes. This is a person who I think has been groundbreaking for so long and kind of had to swim upstream because the topic she has the textbook on food addiction and carbohydrate addiction, all this stuff we're talking about that people say doesn't exist. So Dr. Joan Ifland, it's such an honor to have you. And I'm so excited to hear your whole story. And, I was fortunate enough to have you on the Low Carb MD podcast. And we actually both were tearing up afterwards because we're seeing how important it is. And your life's work is really impacting people, and to see the fruit of that, it's got to be amazing. So tell people your story and who you are, because I think it's really important.
Oh, Brian, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate being here. My story, it's a long story. I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. But I was born in 1951. I'm 69 years old. I grew up in a very chaotic household. Now I know that we were using, I had the sugary breakfast. I had the breakfast of sugary cereal and, sugary drink, putting sugar on top of the sugary cereal. My mother grew up, she was the only child of immigrants, and they didn't teach her how to cook. She was spoiled. And in the 1950s, I've just learned recently, the processed food corporations were already shaming women, saying, oh no, cooking and household chores, that's old fashioned. You're a modern woman, you shouldn't be doing that. And it was the same thing as cigarettes are sexy, processed foods are cool. And so there was a lot of fighting and violence in the household that I grew up in. My mother always had a glass of sugar and caffeine in her hand. And things were out of hand. There was fighting not just between them and me, but with my siblings as well. They were eating the same sugary foods, which of course destabilizes blood glucose and makes people absolutely crazy. So it was and now I'm just starting to look at this piece of it. So I had an addicted brain as a small child, probably at birth. I don't think, that the corporations also shamed women for breastfeeding. So I'm pretty sure that I was bottle fed, which meant that I was getting these huge doses of refined sugar right from day one. So what that means for somebody growing up in that environment with that kind of a diet is that they're trying to gain essential life skills in an addicted brain. Small children, addicted brain. They're not learning relationship management, because when there's a blow up, and there are always being blow ups, they can just go. I could always go out to the kitchen and make myself a sugar, fat, salt combination snack and just numb out. And the thing is, we were all rail thin. We didn't have the massive snack packages, and our TV was curtailed. So we were all rail thin. You would not have known from looking at us, those three kids, that we had a problem with food, but you could have told from our behavior, the constant fighting, the eruption, the screaming, the yelling. It was awful. I had an awful upbringing. Nonetheless, at some point in my brain, in my upbringing, I got the idea that if I just worked hard enough and performed, that I would be okay. The parents would accept me, and they would stop criticizing me, they would approve of me, and everything would be okay. So in college, I developed workaholism. That was a kind of a safe place. It seemed like a safe place to go. I went to Oberlin College, graduated in economics and political science, and then I went to work for the Wisconsin State Legislature on their fiscal policy staff. So, I looked great from the outside. I got into Stanford Business School in 1976 and did okay there. I wasn't ready for it, but I hung on, and I could do the workaholism, and I got through it. And then I went to work for a Fortune 200 holding company in Manhattan on their financial staff. And again, did well. I was running a 20-person operation by the time I left. Married one of my Stanford Business School classmates, and we had two kids, two girls in 1983 and 1984. And after two back-to-back pregnancies, my husband was on Wall Street. He was making 10 times the amount that I was making, and so it didn't make sense for me to work anymore. And I was really too sick to go back to work. The allergies had really set in. I'd had allergies my whole life. I had asthma my whole life. I had a constant sinus infection. I was sick. So I did not go back to work, and just got sicker and sicker. But I started yo-yo dieting. From these back-to-back pregnancies, I had gained weight, and all I knew what to do was what my mother had done. She was very vain, and she was a restrictor. So I would go through these periods of restricting, lose the weight, regain it, lose the weight, regain it. And at the same time, I was terrified that I was going to recreate that chaotic, violent household for my children. So I was really working hard on rage. I had to have this rage that would erupt without my agreement, and I would kind of, disassociate from it. Like, I had this feeling of watching myself rage and wishing it would stop. So the only thing I knew was one-on-one therapy. And I did that for years, and it was painful. But at least I learned, what had happened to me in childhood. It was very valuable, but it didn't do anything for the raging, and it didn't do anything for the eating either. In fact, it kind of made the eating worse. I'd go to a therapy session and I would just go binge afterwards because it was so stressful. So that went on until I learned of an addiction that my husband had. And I went into Codependence Anonymous to just try to cope with my relationship with him. And that didn't help. I went into these programs full heart, got a sponsor, did the writing, work the steps, went to the meetings. At the same time, I was doing a women's, quote unquote, women's healing group. And I trained. I thought, oh, wow, this is it. I went to 14 weekends with them all over the country. Didn't help. So finally, one of the people in the codependency group realized that it was sugar driving my behavior. And she stopped me, and as codependency, you're not supposed to be trying to control other people. Nonetheless, she stopped me a couple of times in the year that I was in there and said, you should try Food Addicts in Recovery. And like, I was in this thin phase. And I'm like, why are you talking to me about food addiction? But by the end of the year, I had regained the weight. So I went and got the book. And of course, I didn't read the book about food addiction. I just went to the food plan. I started January 1st, 1996. And within 4 days, the miracles started. So I just got off the sugars and flours. I didn't know about the other addictive substances. But on that 4th day, it was a Thursday, and I was sitting at my dining room table doing some work. And I sat down at 8 o'clock. It got to be noon. I thought, wow, I haven't thought about food in 4 hours. That's weird. And then I realized that my brain fog had lifted. And then I realized that I wasn't tired. And I thought, wow, that's really weird. I knew that I wasn't going to lose any weight on this program because there was way too much food. I was eating a lot of food. I'm a calorie restrictor. And by the end of the week, I'd lost 2 pounds. Like, okay, this is now getting weirder. The next week, I noticed that the allergies were gone. The bloating was gone or going. And it vastly improved in a very short period of time. And then the next week, I realized that my sinus infection, which I had, I just had for decades, had cleared up. But it was in the 3rd week. I'm standing in my kitchen, and I realized I haven't yelled at anybody in 3 weeks. And I don't know how I knew this, but it hit me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I knew that it was about the food. And fortunately, I had started going to the support group. So that Saturday I went, and there was some speaker, and I'm like, what, a speaker? What am I'm gonna have to wait to ask my question. But I did. I got to say, do people get less irritable on this food plan? Like, there were 20 people in the room. They all went, yeah. I'm like, what? All those years of therapy, all that time and money spent with the healing group, and this is now my second 12-step fellowship. And it wasn't any of that. It wasn't my childhood issues. I was having a reaction to this group of substances, the sugars and the flours. So I immediately, being a good codependent person, I made a handout. My girls were in a little girls' school. I sat down with them. My therapist fortunately helped me. I sat down with those girls and my husband, and I said, I'm not going to give you these foods anymore, but I will give you any of these foods that you like. So I showed them the excluded list and the unprocessed list. I said, circle everything you like on that unprocessed list. And by then, even in that space of 3 or 4 weeks, they had noticed such a huge change in my personality that they're like, Mom, anything we can do to help you. And my therapist gave me 4 rules. They can't bring it in the house. They can't eat it in front of you. You're not going to take them to buy it, and you're not going to pay for it. So it was a great combination of reduced queuing with me not enabling them. So my part of the deal was whenever they left the house, they would have a bag full of clean food. They would have, they left the house in the morning, they had a breakfast in their bag, they had a lunch in their bag, and they had 2 snacks in their bag. When I picked them up from school at 5 o'clock, dinner was in the car. We had a long drive home. So they had clean food on time, all the time. That was my part of the deal, where they never have to choose between going hungry or eating something bad. And it worked. Their grades came up, their athletic performance came up. They became very popular because they were the kids with the even dispositions, cheerful, outgoing. And, they went on to have spectacular high school careers. So I thought to myself, you know what, this is not fair. I need to tell the other mothers about this. And I took my hand out, and I told every mother I was totally obnoxious about it. And none of them could do it. None of them could do it. Like, I would see them, did you try it? Isn't it amazing? And we haven't started yet. And that was my first indication that I was up against a severe addiction. This is 25 years ago, and this addiction has gotten much worse over those 25 years, but that's what got me started. It was huge.
It's amazing. And your story, when I heard it, I had goosebumps, because now in my clinical experience, back then, like when we were seeing this, it wasn't really, other than you describing, people weren't really talking about that. So they thought we were nutty, because I said, I had a long talk with Tro, and I said, do we really want to publish this one? Because we were talking about addiction. But what I was seeing clinically, and what Tro was seeing clinically by cutting carbohydrates, is that people's other addictions were getting made: alcohol addiction, pornography addiction, shopping addiction, stress addictions, all these things. You think, why would that be? And if this whole thing of evening out the brain, and I have couples now that I love to take care of couples together. And a lot of times we'll talk, and I'll say, how's things at home, guys? And the husband will look at me like, I don't really want to say it, but should I say it, not say it? And they said, she's really calm now. She's very even. Like, he'll say that and he's embarrassed. And she looks like, what are you talking about? I was always calm. He goes, no, you weren't. You'd freak out. And he goes, certain things I know you're going to stress out and freak out about, you're calm. And he's like, it's weird. Right. And I always noticed that in my patients. Well, I was treating them for obesity and diabetes, but then they would come back saying, oh my gosh, doc, yeah, sure, I lost 20 pounds, but I feel calm. I'm enjoying the neighbors. The sun is out again. And I walked out of a fog that I was in my entire life. And you realize, wow, is a lot of that going to be dietary related? And now we have evidence, study after study, bipolar, schizophrenia, Dr. Palmer is doing some great work. There's so many great people saying, we're seeing the same thing. And it kind of gives us justification, or at least, for you at that time. And still today, there's no such thing as addiction. You guys are crazy. You should have your license taken. It's like, well, you don't have people that say they have to get a cup of coffee every morning to get going, or a drink to calm their nerves, or grandma takes the kids and hops them up on sugar and drops them off, and the parents are upset. And I'm seeing that clinically, where patients that I'm taking care of, because of what they're doing, they're looking at their kids and they're saying, oh my gosh, let's have them eat the same food we're eating. Guess what? Their grades get better. They're getting calls from teachers for the first time that they're doing great things in class. They're not. And so all these kids that were medicating ADD, you say, well, if we get their lifestyle right, maybe we can help these kids.
Yeah. It takes, what I'm really finding now, 25 years later, it's a couple of things. I think the addiction has progressed population-wide. People are more severely addicted. The consequences are now, they're life-threatening and they're life-taking. 72% of people who have died from COVID have an underlying diet-related condition. So it's becoming more desperate, and still people are not able to stop. So I think what's happened in those 25 years is the relentless processed food industry, with the complicity of mainstream media, has, that the addicted brain cells are more sensitive, more reactive, more flooding the brain with dopamine, serotonin, endocannabinoids, and opiates, because there are so many different addictive substances. There are the refined carbohydrates, there's excessive salt, some people react to dairy, the casomorphins in dairy, there's the gluteomorphine in grains and gluten, and then there are the caffeinated drinks, and then there are the food additives. And the FDA is not really monitoring effectively food additives. So you have all of the potentially addictable brain cells are addicted, and they've been addicted since childhood. And this is a disease that isolates people. So it's not like they can go out and get an oxytocin fix from their community, because they're either their body shape or the fatigue or the depression or the low self-esteem are preventing them from connecting to other people. And instead they're connecting to people on television. The stories are coming out. So the actors that we're watching on television are doing stressful things to each other, stressful programming, and they're eating disordered. So mirror neurons are picking up on these actors who are eating disordered, and creating eating disorders in the viewers. It's
And
a mess.
not only that is every other commercial is going to be food, fast food, eat something, and triggers in your brain. Oh, I'm hungry. Let me go get a snack, right? They're not doing that for no reason. They know they're going to make you hungry and you're going to
Well,
go
and
eat
people
more.
will say, but I don't watch the commercials. You don't have to. The programming where you have underfed actors is going to trigger fear of famine in the watcher. The actors are doing mean things to each other. 98% of the brain doesn't understand screens. And so that part of the brain is totally stressing out, which is triggering the addiction. You don't have to watch the commercials.
And to exacerbate that, we're all fearful of COVID. We're locked in our house. We're not exercising. We're not eating right. And sales of all these cereals. As a matter of fact, on Mother's Day, I was with my mom. We went to go get her some meat at the store, and I was stunned by how many cereal boxes with all different cartoon characters and all the crazy stuff. I mean, the whole aisle, as far as like 50 yards. I mean, it's just ridiculous how much, and it's all cartoon characters, and all these people are saying,
it's all for
"Oh,
children."
I just want to go remember when I was a kid and I just watched Saturday morning cartoons and had my sugary cereal. That's when my parents would let me have it. Then it became every day. And then we realized the implications, and we see the violence, we see the anger, and people don't want to make that connection for some reason.
Well, learning disabilities. So the addiction pulls the blood supply away from the frontal lobe, which is why we have these epidemics of attention deficit, learning difficulties, poor decision making, poor impulse control, and memory loss. Now, the connection with dementia and Alzheimer's is pretty well established. It's horrible.
Yeah, you
And
look
the
across the
government just
board,
agrees with it. Yeah.
and Ben Bickman has shown this elevated insulin resistance, visceral fat is all causally, not just associated, causally related to all these illnesses that we're saying, oh, here's a pill, here's a pill, here's a pill. Now we're in a massive disadvantage because there's doctors who I've talked to about this stuff that understand the concept, but they're like, Brian, I got 6 minutes with a patient. I can't explain all that stuff. They realize they realize that even if they know, they don't want to know, because if you realize, oh my gosh, look at the elevated insulin and cardiac risk, stroke risk, dementia, Parkinson's, go down the list, pick it, polycystic ovary disease, erectile dysfunction, all these things that people listening will identify with.
We have evidence for 140 medical conditions related to processed foods. But to fast forward over those 25 years, I did I wrote a popular book. I did a PhD program in addictive nutrition, wrote the textbook, wrote and edited the textbook. And what I gradually
with how many references, like
2,000
references to something that people say doesn't
from research, because researchers have been looking at obesity, eating disorders, and drug addiction ever since we had brain imaging technology in the late 1990s. And we now know. But as they've done their research, they are asking questions, but they're surfacing findings that illustrate the presence of an addiction. So it was possible to write this very extensive textbook from the research. There are hundreds of thousands of studies on those three topics. So it's very, very well substantiated. But here is what I now see from writing the textbook. One, it's a really severe addiction. Two, it's constantly provoked by the processed food industry and the environment. And three, people with this addiction are deeply traumatized. They've had the addiction itself, which is traumatizing, and then they've gone to the health community, and the health community didn't have any answers. And they've gone to programs one after another and been blamed for the failure, when it was the program is like a weight loss program is not nearly strong enough to overcome a lifetime addiction. So now we do have an answer. We have the Addiction Reset community. It's immersion. Immersion recovery is what's required, where you can turn to kind of call it clean messaging. Clean messaging leads to clean thinking, and that leads to clean eating. So it's a very exciting time in the field.
Yeah, it is so exciting what you're talking about, because it's stuff we see and we know. Once you go down a certain path, I think like what you're talking about, to correct you though, us doctors had answers for people, but they were just the wrong answers. Right? exercise more, eat less, you know, here,
I
eat
stand
6 times a
corrected.
day. Yeah, we had the answers, but they were wrong. And I had to realize what I'm telling people, that either they're all not listening, but because of my struggle with weight, I knew I was following my own advice and it wasn't working. So maybe my advice was wrong. And I had to
Mhm.
reassess that. And I think a lot of doctors, health experts, dietitians have never struggled with weight, so they don't understand the battle that we're in, right? The addiction
No,
battle,
they
the
don't. I
the
know a new
emotional part.
member, and it was the ARC, the Addiction Reset Community. A new member said the other day that she was relieved just to be in a group that understood. What does it mean? What happens when you have a severe craving? Well, I mean, we know from the imaging research, the blood supply leaves the frontal lobe entirely and it floods the brain with these craving neurotransmitters. You don't have a chance. You cannot think your way out of that. You cannot exercise willpower out of that. All you can do is change channels. You know, now you can come into a Zoom screen where people understand and your brain will just flip right over. The craving can be stopped. But we needed that kind of a resource to make that happen.
Yeah, and I think it's so, like, one thing you said is so critical also, and I see this because with my patients, I do Zoom meetings all the time. And one thing that we just had a meeting last night. We were talking about, is anyone hungry? Like, oh my gosh, I'm not hungry all the time. I'm not thinking about food. I'm enjoying life, and I don't have to worry about preparing everything. I plan ahead, and all these things, that these tools that they're learning are lifelong, and they're doing great. But one thing I've noticed is, I know because I meet with my patients one-on-one also, and I have a patient that we were just talking, and she's struggling with candy when she goes home because she's stressed out because the drive stressed her out. She's sitting there for an hour doing nothing. I was like, listen to Joan's information, listen to a podcast,
Oh,
listen to something
yeah,
positive, right?
yeah.
But now she's hitting a punching bag for that. And she said, I get home, I hit the punching bag for a few minutes, I feel better, and I can relax, and I can, but it's whatever works for you. But I think
Hmm.
the big thing that I've noticed is in group meetings, like we'll have 15, 20 people in a meeting, and I know people are struggling with certain things and they don't say anything. And then when I meet with them the next day or two, I'll say, hey, how come you didn't mention that when I prompted you to say what you're struggling with? And she goes, well, 4 people said this in the same week. Everyone else has their act together except me, right?
Same. Yeah,
Yeah, everyone thinks
same.
everyone else has it. Like at church, they think everyone else there is perfect except them. They're the only one who's having struggles, and it's like everyone's the same. We all have struggles. We are not perfect. So I think that's so important for us to have a community where we feel comfortable, like
Yeah,
what you're talking about, saying, "Look, I'm
we get
struggling
that.
with this."
We get that a lot. People say, "I'm so relieved to know I'm not alone."
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a huge thing.
that's a very interesting. It's a very interesting force that I'm not alone. People understand because for 7 million years of human brain development, if you were in a tribe and they understood you, you would live. If they knew that this meant there's a giant hyena behind that bush, we got to either run or fight, you would live. But if you were in a tribe that could not understand you, you would die. And I think that's what's going on here. People come into our community, they're understood. Okay, we understand and we can explain the brain science behind it. And they're just like, oh, I'm going to live. They're so excited. And then because they hear everybody else talking about these struggles, they can talk about them. And when you can voice a danger, when you can put it into words, you can live. But if you can't put it into words, that primitive brain, the frontal lobe is only 2% of the
That's,
brain.
Joan, that's the male brain, by the way. Do you know that, right? Right? That's guys, we self-destruct because we don't say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this," or "I'm thinking about, you know, giving this lady a ride home. Do you think that's a good idea? Should I go to the bar and meet that?" All these things where guys hold it in, then all of a sudden they're train wrecks. Like, how come you didn't say anything before? But they think they can pull themselves out. When pull yourself by your bootstraps, be tough. Suck it up. We like to say that kind of stuff. You're
Yeah,
weak if you have an addiction, and so it's a hard
yeah.
thing. And I think the problem, I think it is, it's the same thing when I go out to dinner with a friend, for instance, and they go, "Here, have the bread, have the pasta, have the dessert." I go, "No thanks, no thanks, no thanks," and it bothers them because they feel, even though I'm not saying it, they feel like, "Oh my gosh, I shouldn't be eating this," but if he eats it, then it's okay. So a lot of people lead each other down. When you have a morbidly obese
Absolutely.
family member and you invite them for Thanksgiving and you say, "Here, have some pie. I just want," "No, I don't want it." "Oh no, just have a piece." Well, they're like the alcoholic. You wouldn't say, "Here, have one glass of wine with me."
Yeah.
You're weak if you can't do that.
You're
Because
just
yeah,
nailing it. These are weak points. I mean, we tell our people send an email before the holiday, before the family visit. Say, please do not offer me these foods. And I'm starting to tell people, take your own food. Don't ask them.
I'm telling you, I
Yeah,
love it. I mean, we are so on the same page. That's why, for me, I'm a person of faith. And so for me, I think Joan and I were talking because we're both doing great things. And we say, gosh, if we could team up and help a lot of people, we can do this. And then it just happens. I'm supposed to have a patient right now, but they called in, they just got a COVID shot and weren't feeling well. So they cancel. I'm like, oh my gosh, let's do it. We're trying to figure our calendars out. How do we make this happen? Let's just do it right now. Okay, great.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
think, when you start seeing those things and how everything kind of pans out at some point, you say, wow, gosh, because I see what I'm doing. I need you for what I'm doing, and you need me for what you're doing in a way
I
from the medical
do.
perspective.
We need relationships with doctors, with physical therapists, with physician assistants, with nurses, with nutritionists, with dietitians. They're all coming up against this
Psychologists,
invisible
yeah.
wall. The psychologists, the therapists, the social workers, they're all coming up
Exercise,
against this
Ben Bikikio,
and
the exercise, right?
yeah. This invisible wall. And they're telling their patients to do these things, and it's not penetrating because they're trying to teach into this little tiny frontal lobe. But what the 98% of the brain does respond to is community and messaging. So the frontal lobe can't square off directly with the other 98%, but the frontal lobe can control the messaging that reaches the other 98%. And it's pretty amazing how quickly the brain will adapt to a new community. Because conforming was also survival. If you were doing what your tribe was doing, you would live. Find food, eat food, find shelter, get in the shelter, fight the predators, if you were functioning as a group. But the person who didn't have that conformance drive, the one who wandered off by themselves, they would be eaten by the wild animals. They wouldn't survive, they wouldn't procreate. So that is the key to everything we're finding, is to get that 98% of the brain to latch on to this group of healthy people. And it's pretty amazing that people can change. I mean, we hear people, I've been trying to do this for decades, and I don't believe I just did it on the first day of being in the ark. Well, it's because those mirror neurons just switched over. There's a new tribe. What do? We need to do that too. And you're not trying to get this very weak, deprived frontal lobe to run the show, which is just a losing game.
And especially if you're triggered by stress, anxiety, not feeling like you're a good enough person, a lot of people, the negative self-talk, all those things, like you can never do this. You failed so many times, but you tried programs that were never right for you. Once you get on the right thing, and I have one of my patients, she's crushing it, and she comes in, she goes, I'm feeling really anxious. I go, why? She goes, because it's so easy and I'm having so much fun. I should be like, right? I should be struggling. I should be feeling bad, but I feel great.
Yes.
When is that going to happen? I'm like, it's not going to happen. You're through the worst part of this, right?
We have a Facebook group, Food Addiction Education, which is for the public. We're over 19,000 people out there. And so I put out there once, recovery should be really fun. And this, you could tell she was like old school. She came back and says, recovery is not fun. Recovery is hard. And I'm like, no, it's not.
No, it's not. No, it doesn't have to be. It's the same, I see that same mindset of this self-compassion. Like, okay, say you went out and had pizza last night. Okay, you had it. Enjoy it. Have fun. And then today you say, okay. And I think we get the mindset. So I have people all the time say, okay, I blew it over the weekend, so I'm going to pay. I'm going to make myself suffer this week. I'm going to fast. I'm going to exercise more. I'm going to do all this stuff. Not say, okay, look, I deserve not to feel bad. How did you feel when you ate the pizza? Oh, I felt terrible the next day. My stomach hurt. And how did you feel when you weren't eating the pizza? I felt great. My energy was great. And I was happy. I was like, okay, do you owe that to yourself to be happy? Reward yourself by eating healthy and taking care of yourself and not eating the terrible food that makes you feel guilty and bad and upset. Reward yourself. Go get a massage. Go exercise. Reward your body for doing the right thing. So a lot of times when people get that mindset right, because we're really self-critical, because a lot of us, like you, had parents who were demanding and say, you had to perform, you have to do certain things. It's like, okay, you don't win the football game. It's okay. What do we learn from that? How do we move forward? How do we do it next time? Right?
Brutal culture. But here is one of the most powerful recovery tools, period. The index card. So when you go out and you have pizza, and you're only having pizza because the craving triggers and cues built up and overcame your frontal lobe. You weren't choosing to do that. That's the addicted brain driving that behavior without without you choosing. We see the research. The addicted brain cells can activate the behavior brain cells directly without activating the frontal lobe. So what you do is you retrain the cue. You put pizza on one side of the card, and then you put stomach ache, no energy on the other side. And it's just like learning a vocabulary word in a foreign language. You read it over and over and over again, over and over and over again, so that when you see pizza, instead of yummy, I want that coming up, you have stomach ache and no energy come up. Oh no, no thanks. So it's really rewiring, retraining, which you can do. You can teach brain cells to connect in new ways, just through repetition.
And I want to share something with you. One of my patients said, a couple, they went to Las Vegas, and I said, how'd you guys survive Las Vegas? It's kind of a tough place when you're low carb and trying to watch your diet. And they said, you know what? Before we went, my husband's favorite Thai food is there. So we said, Wednesday night, we're going to Thai food. And we had rice, we had all the carbs, we had all this stuff. We had a good night, a couple glasses of wine. He paired it. He's a sommelier, so he paired it, and he had a great thing. So we had a blast. She said, Bloods. When we were in the airport, every time we go to Las Vegas, when we're at the airport flying there, we get a couple beers and a big thing of French fries or nachos or something like that. Then on the way home, we do the same thing. She said, we walked by and said, that's not us anymore, right? We're not doing that. And I was like, wow, that is so great. And then you go and you enjoy it. You don't feel guilty. Say, hey, we can get back on track, because so many people, they feel like, oh, I had that Thai food. Now the next day I'm going to have the cereal for breakfast. I'm going to eat terrible stuff all day. And then they just give up rather than saying, or 1 pound weight difference. And, those kind of things just really trigger people. And they go, forget it. I can't do this. I'm going to eat. This negativity comes out really quickly. So, I'm giving a talk coming up, and I'm saying it just depends. Like people say, can I do this? Well, it just depends. It depends on you. Can you have one drink? I don't know. Can you? Right? It really, I can't give you the answer. But if you say, I have people who are.
Do you want to?
Or do you want to? Right?
Yeah.
Or is it that if you have that one drink, you're going to have 12 drinks? You can't stop. Yeah. So if you are that person, then the answer is no. You can't. Right? So if you can't have one cookie a month or whatever you do, or what I like, I've heard this said too, is that okay, it's not that because people say, can I ever eat sourdough bread again? Say, well, just say not today, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah,
right? Sometimes you say not today, maybe tomorrow, but the next day you say not today. Then it's not such as you have to run a marathon today. You say, I'll try walking first, and I'll jog.
Stressful.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so stressful when you think about it that way. It's like, I can't imagine ever doing that. Right.
Well, you're on a crucial topic, which is doable steps, easy steps. We just saw some research that if the program defines steps that are too big, the person will quit.
Exactly.
We've also seen research that if your social circle is using, if they're gaining weight, you cannot lose weight inside that social circle. You've got to replace the social circle. But the good news is that if you do improve, you find a different social circle, you improve, but you're still active in the weight gaining social circle, they will get better. I mean, mirror neurons work, the conformance drive works. It's what I tell people in households. If you stick to your program, everybody else in your household has mirror neurons. Those mirror neurons are helplessly going to be very interested in what you're doing. Don't fight, don't push, set the boundaries that we were talking about. Like, no, you can't bring that in. You got to lock that in the trunk of your car. But
I'll tell you, Joan, it's so excited to talk to you, because one of my patients, the family actually called me before. They go, look, doc, we love your podcast. We've lost weight. We're doing, but my mother-in-law is a disaster, and she's going to be the hardest patient. She's a Latina. She's strong-willed. She wants to eat her fruit, and she wants to eat this stuff, and she won't listen to us. But we're bringing her to you out of desperation because she's having health problems. Anyways, this lady crushed. She gets it because I had a continuous glucose. She said, "Did you see what the pineapple did? Did you see what the apple did? Did you see what this did?" And, certain fruits she would see and go, "Okay, I'm not doing that again." But this lady over time influenced. I think she's 70 years old, maybe 72, maybe. She influenced her entire community. Her son stopped drinking. Her other son stopped drinking alcohol. One stopped drinking soda. One stopped, and they're having dinner with her. They go, "Whatever you're doing, we want to do." And so her whole family, her community, her neighbor who's diabetic is decreasing medication. This one lady, who everyone says is going to fail, she's like the evangelist there. Oh, this, here's what I did. It's working. Because people would ask her, "What are you doing?" And then she would say, "Oh, this is what I'm doing." So it's working. Okay, maybe I'll mirror that. So people start mirroring in that community when they say,
Yes.
and I think I tell people that it's like, okay, be able to be, everyone thinks you're crazy for a while, but pretty soon those same people are going to come and say, what are you doing? Right?
Well, that's what I tell my people. First they're shamed and they don't want to talk about it. And then, you can see in their skin, in their eyes, in their body shape, in the way they're talking, their energy. And so what I say to them is, hang on, even though everybody else in the book club is having something bad and you're having something good, one of those people is going to have a health crisis, and you're going to be the person who can turn it around, because they'll remember, oh, I have this friend. So I mean,
Yeah.
we turn into
And
beacons
it's
of
okay to be
hope.
a light, but don't shine your light directly in their eyes. Like when the police pull you over that
Good
light, you
one.
can't see anything. You know what I mean? It's one of those things, be a light, but don't let people ask to see the light. Don't for in anything, religion, whatever it is, like people,
Yeah.
don't force stuff. If you're doing a
Yeah.
good job and you're having success, people will ask you about it. And I think that's part of
Yeah.
this podcast, of being able to say, look, prove your faith, prove what you believe. Why do you believe that? It's like, okay, I'm not going to force on you, but if it works for you, cool. If it doesn't, go do stuff. If what you're talking about doesn't work, then we have to figure out something else. But I
Yeah.
think you are the missing link. I tease Ben Bikikio because he's a big muscle guy. So he's kind of the missing link. And he was the missing link because everyone said exercise doesn't matter. But exercise didn't matter if you were going to go and eat donuts and cake after you exercise. It wasn't going to help you. But if you eat properly and you exercise and you get enough sleep and you don't hate the world and you do all these other things we're talking about, people do better. They lower the stress hormones, like you're talking about,
Yeah.
the insulin levels and all these things
Yeah.
that really make us make bad choices. I
Yeah.
kind of think about it this way, is people say, well, just do this, just eat less and exercise more. It's like, if you have someone drowning in the ocean, you don't tell them, hey, just calm down, you're fine, don't worry, it's good.
Yeah. Just
Just
swim.
just breathe more air than water and
Yeah.
you'll be fine.
Just
But you
swim.
say,
Yeah.
hey, if I can throw you a life raft to hold on to, now I can
Yeah.
reason with you a little bit. But in a
Yeah.
panic mode, forget it, ain't gonna happen, right? If someone's
Yeah.
drunk, you can't talk logic. We've all been in those kind of
Yeah.
situations, like, okay, I'll wait till they
That's a
sober
great
up, right?
analogy. That
But I
is
think
a
it's
really good
it's so
analogy.
important that we don't, because I have interviewed people on the podcast. Dan Cadmus comes to mind, that he got his brain right before he got his nutrition right, meaning he
Oh,
started doing
yeah.
yoga and meditation and calming his nerves. And then he says, I lost weight before I really changed eating terrible food. But once I changed the terrible food, everything snowballed and I got better,
Totally.
better and better. And
Totally.
that impacted me, because usually we're saying, okay, my approach has been, let's get the nutrition right and the brain gets right. But I think both things that we're talking about are very critical.
Well, you know what we're coming up with now after 3.5 years of having the ARC is we're organizing, we've made, just, I don't know, many, many videos. So we're organizing them into click funnels so that you can watch one and then watch the next and watch the next. So what we're going to do with people coming in is we're going to give them a list of topics. What is foremost for you? Because like you were saying, it might be a relationship problem. You may have to disengage from a toxic person before you have enough brain width to pay attention to yourself. It might be a job situation, which you've got to resolve first. Or it might be that you just don't know what to eat. So the food videos versus the relationship videos versus the cueing videos versus the night eating videos. People are, it's just such a comprehensive, nasty condition, but people are more self-identifying almost as, what do I need the most? And so we're going to send them those series of videos first.
And I think
Yeah.
thinking about that too is saying, okay, what do I need? Do I really need cookies, or do I need a hug? Or do I need someone to say, yeah, sorry, you had a hard day?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
do I just need to be nice to myself? Do I need to go for a walk outside and just smell the roses
Yes.
for an hour, or, collect rocks or do a puzzle? I don't care. I have people
Yes.
that do crazy
Yes.
stuff. I'm like, do you find joy doing that? Yeah. Okay, cool. Not hurting anyone
Yeah.
else. Good. Go
Yeah.
for it. Right. So I
Yeah.
think that's what we have, so many aspects of these things. And so where do you find your peace? Where do you find your joy? Where do you find your meaning?
So the ARC is it's now up to 12 hours a day of just people hanging out on Zoom screens or programming. We're training ARC managers, so there are study groups online, which everybody's invited to, all the members of the ARC. There are kind of working sessions, chats. There's social hours where people are just hanging out. That's where I go. So I know really Rob Lustig taught me this, that when you go into a community, your tribe, there's an oxytocin release. So even if your dopamine and serotonin and cannabinoid and opiate pathways are blown out from the addiction, if you go into community, you'll get an oxytocin fix. And that will stop a craving dead in its tracks. So we do a lot of emotional processing in the ARC. We're not therapists. This is all peer support, but that's where I go. And I can go there in my head because I've spent so many hours. I spend 2 or 3 hours a day in the ARC. I had a really severe addiction. I had really severe trauma. So at that level of recovery, at that level of engagement, I have a chance to program enough calm brain cells to overcome the traumatized brain cells, the stressed brain cells, the addicted brain cells, the painful memories. So I've actually created a place inside my brain. I call it my ARC land, my ARC brain, where all I have to do is start an affirmation. I am an ARC warrior for wellness. I decide what I think, what I feel, what I do. And that thinking stimulates the ARC trained part of my brain, which after 3.5 years, and I'm not going anywhere. I like this. I like being able to just go into my community and be in my calm brain and leave the addicted brain and the stressed brain and the traumatized brain and deprive those parts of the brain from blood supply. I want the happy part of my brain to have all my blood supply. So what I've done is I've learned positive triggering, positive cueing. And it's really cool, really, to be able to direct where the brain flow in the head is going at your command. It's cool. It's very cool stuff.
Yeah, and I think just taking a breath, just breathing. I'll tell you, and I know I'm right on this one, so I'll quote myself on this because certain patients, I look at them and say they're going to have trouble in my brain. I know it. They're a middle-aged, menopausal, premenopausal, postmenopausal female real estate agent, stressed all the time. During our meeting, they're like, hold on, I got to send this test. Oh, I'll be right with you. Like we have a 15 or 20 minute, half an hour meeting, and 12 times they're getting bothered because I look at that and I say, that was me at my old practice when I was working 14-hour days, stress, 14 people, in a row, knocking on the door, no breaks. And I was like, that stresses me out. I don't like that. I want to spend time with people like this and enjoy company. So when I see people like that, I think, oh, you don't have time. Because I'll say, did you work out this week? No, I didn't have time. Did you have time for this? Well, what's the latest TV show? You know them all because you're watching TV, you're stressed out. You go home, you have a couple of drinks. That's your life because that's your only way to relax. And you don't say, oh, if I exercise, I feel better. Oh, maybe I'll just keep doing that. Maybe I'll make that a habit.
Yeah.
Those people, I have a lot of struggles with. I want to send them your way because they need you because it's like, their piece is grabbing snacks and cookies and whatever and not saying, okay, what do I really need? Really, sometimes one of my patients is a huge, very powerful businesswoman. She went to Napa with her husband. She said, Doc, you've been telling me to relax forever. She said, I sat on the balcony. I didn't care about work. I didn't care about the kids. I sat there and looked at the vineyards and I had a glass of wine. She said, my nerves calm and I was very good. And she said, it wasn't about the wine. It was just being and not being stressed in this whole, like the environment is such a thing. So to be able to escape to the ARC is, that's really cool. And really, that makes my job easier having someone like you to get my patients to, for sure.
You've got this thing, this phone with you all the time.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be working on an app. So being able to pull up that app and instantly just switch the blood flow over to your ARC brain.
We're all working on that
all the time.
We're all working on that, and we see that, and that's one thing I'm hoping that we could do in the future is have something where my patient could go to yours, like we all plug in together and say, hey, you're struggling with addiction. Here we go. Yeah, we really need a team of people because none of us could do it on our own. And how about you? Like all these years of dealing with people saying she doesn't know, there's no such thing as this. This is not real, and all these thousands of references and all these articles, and it's the same thing we strike. They go, oh, calorie restriction, all that matters. Low carb just works because there's a lot of other factors: stress, life, sleep. All these constant contact. Community, like you're saying, have a tribe. Not that you have to be tribal, but you have somewhere where you fit and you say, oh my gosh, these guys get
I belong.
Me. Yeah, I belong. Safe. Yeah, whatever it is. And so I belong, and these people are struggling with the same things. And what I love in my community here when we do our meetings is that I could step back and I could shut up maybe for a few. I like to talk, but when I try to shut up, I hear people say, you know what I did? I had that same problem. Here's what I did. Here's what works for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you try this. And someone else says, well, you
Mm-hmm.
know what I did? I did it this way. Oh, I love that. And so people are exchanging ideas because they've dealt with the same dang thing. It's not, but when
Uh-huh.
you feel like you're the only one struggling with it, you never get a solution because you obviously you've had bad coping mechanisms to get you to be 350 pounds, right? So you say, okay,
Yeah.
that's not working. When you
Yeah.
say, when they said that's not us anymore, I was like, wow, that is really profound. And, planning ahead, one of my ladies going fishing for 3 days. And she said, I got the itinerary and they said, we're providing all the sodas, all the chips, all the crackers, all the snacks. And she said, I'm taking my own food. Why am I going to eat that? I feel terrible. I'm going to go out there and enjoy
Yeah.
life. So you
Yeah.
start realizing it's not like, oh, I'm just going to take a weekend off and do it. I have people go on. One of my favorite couples went to Hawaii for 9 days and they each lost 9 or 10 pounds there. I was like, how the heck did you do that? Because I was ready to like talk them off the ledge. And they said, look, we didn't drink. We went for walks. We hiked. We did all these things. We didn't revolve it all around food. We went to Costco when we got there and we planned ahead and we knew we were going to do that. We went out one night and we had a good time and that was it. So I think those kind of things, when you find what works for you and just do it, I think ultimately it's a one size fits one.
You're describing an incredible challenge in our world, yours and mine world, which is there's this incredible life on the other side. And you get these substances out of your system, you get into a healthy community. It's a life that is just joyful and really pleasurable and really satisfying. But the addiction tells you that it's the substances, the processed foods that are satisfying and pleasurable. This world is so different. I realize I can't describe this. I can't make it believable. I can't to somebody who's never experienced it. But once you get a taste of it, I don't know, you'll keep coming back.
So Joan, what about my patient here, the my patients with an S on the end, that one who's struggling, that just doesn't have any downtime, that's stressed. Like, I don't have time to do ARC. I'm running around. I'm crazy. I got meetings. I have all this stuff. How do you reach that person, or what do you tell them?
What we do is we say, okay, you're getting dressed. Okay, your phone is going off, blah, blah, blah. But over here on your other machine, you've got the ARC. So the subconscious will pull in the ARC. The subconscious is saying, oh, those people are back. Oh, they're around. Okay, well, we've got to copy them. So we know it's messaging. Even though she's on the phone, she's sending message, receiving messages, she's distracted by the phone, the subconscious is plugged into the ARC. What do these people do again? Oh, how do they eat? And she will get better. She will. When you understand that 98% of the brain is helplessly, automatically pulling messaging in from the environment, storing it, and acting on it, then you know what to do. Just get that ARC murmuring. I say, I know you're at your job. People sometimes can organize their day so that they're doing something more tedious or less demanding during the main ARC chats. And so they'll be going through their emails, catching up on emails, but the ARC is playing in the background. Nobody in the ARC ever has to do anything. So when you come to a chat, you put your hand up, turn your microphone off, turn your camera off. It's playing like the radio in the background, but your brain is picking it up.
Yeah, you know what? I say you're getting ready for work. Put that on instead of turning the news on and getting stressed out. Do this, right? Listen to, like, the other day, I was just this morning, because I'm meeting with you, I got up a little earlier and I thought, yesterday I got up and on YouTube, they have channels where it's just relaxing music and waterfalls and different things. Just plug in for a couple minutes while I'm petting my dog or reading something or doing devotionals or something like that. It's like, okay, I feel good. Or I go work out and I say, I feel good. I'm ready to conquer the day. So I think there's so much, you figure out what works for you, because so many of us are saying, I'm so tired. I got to go back to that same job. And I need 5 cups of coffee and I got to deal with my boss this morning. But I think when you're at it, like I always tell people, they go, do you think attitude has a difference? Are you kidding me? Because if I woke you up, if I called Joan at 3 this morning, go, hey, I got 2 tickets to Las Vegas. We're going to have fun. We're going to Hawaii, to this beautiful place, all expenses. You're like wide awake packing. But when I say you're going to work all day, you say, oh gosh, it's so hard. Snooze. I don't want to go to work. But I think when you have passion, like someone like you who has passion for what you do, and now you're finally seeing the fruit that you're helping all these people after like all
It's
those
amazing.
drudgery. Cause like low carb, like people go, how did you do it? I was like, it's been a couple of years. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, it
Like people
takes a
like
long
you,
time.
like
Yeah,
Ben Bakikio has been doing his workout for 40 plus years
yeah,
and no one took him
yeah.
serious till now. Right. I mean, it's ridiculous, but we see the fruit at some point. You see it. You just have to, some people, you have to be more patient than others. Right. And luckily I think people are starting to see it. They go, I want to feel better. Like, I heard something that I really liked. It says, I don't know who to quote this to, but I saw it on Twitter and someone said, healthy people have 1,000 wishes, but sick people only have one, right? You want to get better. And so many people are listening, they're depressed, they're anxious, they lost their business, they're going through the worst time of their life. And that's why I did this podcast, to say, how do I help that person? How do I help the 400-pound diabetic who's sitting there thinking, no one cares about me, I have no hope, right? When I hear those stories and we've interviewed some of them, you get goosebumps, because I've had people say, low carb MD, I listened to in the hospital, I changed my life. I said, okay, that's it, I'm doing this. I stopped taking the sugar that they were giving. I stopped doing this, and they turned his life around. And now he's a pastor. He's doing out playing
No, it's so
music.
fun.
And it's like, and I hear that people say, well, I listen to you when I'm on the tractor. I have people that in Wyoming say, hey, when I go for a hike, I listen to you guys. I'm like, wow, that is just so cool that we can have,
Yeah,
and what you're doing can have such a global impact. And really, when we talk
you
about COVID,
too.
all this stuff together, I mean, that's the thing, is we say, okay, each of us by ourselves, like no one's going to win a football
No.
game if you're the only
But you know
player. You
what you're
build a
saying,
team.
this is what I want to give practitioners. Now that we have the ARC, I want to create an ARC for practitioners. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I want the joy that you and I are experiencing. I want every practitioner to experience that incredible joy. And I've been trying for 20 years to eat clean. Now I'm in your program and I'm eating clean. I feel so much better. Thank you so much. I want every practitioner, all these practitioners are just coming up against this invisible wall of the addiction, and they're retiring early, and they're
Yeah.
frustrated, and they're depressed,
Trust
and
me,
they're eating the bad foods.
we're gonna give a talk together. I'm telling you, because that's one thing, and I think you saw me talk about physician burnout. What a huge deal, because we think we're immune to all this stuff, and we work ourselves.
Mm.
And I was in that, and I knew it. I said, look, I got $300,000 of med school loans. I have to have financial security. I put my family through a lot, sacrificing to get where I was. I'm finally making money, and things look pretty good. And I said, I can't do this anymore, because
Yeah,
I'm not effective. I'm not helping people. It's just
yeah.
a machine, and I'm filling out boxes, and I'm working 4 hours at the end of the day instead of spending time. Then you start realizing, what are your priorities? And that's what I had to do personally. And when you look at that, you say, is it worth it? If you're in a corporate job and you're working your tail off, and I have, I have a sad story about this is a sad story, but you would think it's a happy story. Her husband sold his business for $20 million. He's making $2 million as a consultant. And this patient is struggling all the time, working all the time, stressed out and tense. And she's a psychiatrist. I'm like, what the heck are you doing? Like, I'm worried about finances. Like, really? Seriously? Like, your husband sold a business for more than I'll make in the next 20 years. And like, how financially secure do you have to be at some point? But that there's more to the story than that. That
It's
can't be the whole thing, right? It's
irrational. It's
irrational.
irrational anxiety.
Yeah, irrational anxiety that a lot of us, and whether it's perceived or real, anxiety is anxiety, to some degree. And
Yeah.
so many people are saying, what happens if the space debris falls on my head? Once that this happens, and all day they're walking and they say, take a breath, enjoy the flowers for a
Mm-hmm.
minute. These
Mm-hmm.
kind of things are what you and I are talking about, of being able to
Yeah. Yeah. It's
to
really
live life and navigate life.
teaching people how to manage their brains.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
the key. So
And a lot of it is just blocking out cultural messaging.
since this is called Life's Best Medicine, I have to ask you, what's life's best medicine? Where do you find that for you right now?
Community.
Like you say, community. Yeah, community, relationships, right? Like saying what matters, and impact. I mean, you're making an impact. That's why it's exciting that what we're seeing. And
We have a way, Brian, I think the big message here is, after 25 years, I've been in the field for 25 years of constant study, we have a reliable way. But it takes a partnership. It takes you reinforcing with your patients the need to come to the ARC chats and calls. It takes Ben and you and me to really be able to describe to somebody, like, I'm not an exercise expert. My exercise is get my shoes on, go out for a walk. That's the extent of my expertise, but works for me. But we need, when you can explain to somebody and they're in a community and they're eating clean, then they're so much more likely to do it. I get that all the time. What people like about the ARC is certainly the deep, deep, deep compassion, the easy availability of programming, but also the explanations for why people do things. Because now the explanation they're getting is, oh, you self-sabotage. Oh, you don't like yourself. Oh, you have low self-regard. Oh, you're lazy. Oh, you're not trying hard enough. Oh, you don't want this bad enough. No, and then we come along and we say, no, 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 you just got exposed to a bunch of cues that pulled the blood supply away from your frontal lobe, which is your braking system. It's okay, let's work on the cueing when you're ready, no stress, no deadlines. But just to get the truth, that they're not any of those labels that incompetent practitioners have put on them. I heard somebody say, oh, there's some people who are just unable to commit. No, there's some people who are in a program that's not meeting what they actually need. So I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
and I think
fun, but isn't it
that's
fun?
what's so
I don't
important.
think it's fun.
Like for you, you are an expert. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna come clean, everyone. When I saw Joan, I would see her give talks, and I'd say she seems pretty serious. She's really, I judged, right? And I said, look, she's written the textbook. She knows all this stuff. So I would kind of like do a wide path around her table because I was like, I didn't know her and I was embarrassed. And she said, hey, Brian, do you have a minute? I was like, really? And we sat in time, like, what a nice person, and that you care, and I see that. And you even bought a steak one night when we were out in Florida. That was very nice.
Yes, I'm sitting right
Rob
next to
Sivas
you.
and I have to, oh, yeah, we have to pay you back. And Ignacio Correnta, it was a great, that night, actually, in retrospect, changed my life. Really, when you look back, because stuff that Ignacio said, other people, Rob Sivas'
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about what really matters. And I had to reassess that weekend. And I came back to a total nightmare in my practice with trying to catch up. And I was working 20-hour days. And I was like, I said, this isn't worth it. I just made up my mind at that point. I wasn't planning on leaving and doing this, but at that moment, and then Kobe Bryant died at the same time. And all these things I looked at and I go, okay, what really matters? Do I need the money? No, I'm doing it to help my patients. If I leave, will the patients be taken care of? Yes, there's other doctors who can pop in and do that. But
Mm-hmm.
the style of medicine I practice, I couldn't bring new patients into my practice to help them. So I was frustrated because I couldn't help people who needed it. And I was trying to
Yeah,
help people who didn't want to hear it. And it was
yeah,
now patients self-select me. So I'm cheating the system. And I love it every day because people say,
yeah,
make me better, tell me what to do. It's just
yeah,
like if I go to a mechanic and say, hey, my car's making this. Oh, I know. I've seen this 30 times. Here's what you do. I'll just fix it. I know what to do. Or you have something wrong with termites in your house, you go to the expert, say, fix this, I don't know what to do. And so sometimes just being able to be humble in that and say, I need help. So people
yeah.
reaching out to you, I really know how much you help people. I know how much you care, and I think that's the critical part about it. And
Back
so
at you, Brian. We're two peas in a pod, and Ben is too, and Doug Reynolds is too. We're just all we care about is getting people out of this HELL, and it is HELL. It's horrible
yeah,
to
and it's
be,
like, there's
in this
nothing
world.
better like this. Joan, the reason I started this podcast and people who listen know, it's like I would say something about hope and faith, and I would get attacked for 3 days on Twitter during COVID because I said we need some hope, saying things will get better. It's getting better now. I was right. See, I knew it. But in reality, you go through these hard times, but it's when people kill themselves because they don't think they have any hope. They have nothing's ever going to get better. I'm a loser. It's life's terrible. But when you say, hey, maybe I can build community, maybe I can make a connection with someone, and I have people that I plug together that are really helping each other walk through it because they realize the other person's struggling too, so
Yeah,
that's why
yeah.
what you're doing is so critical. And I think,
It's
the more
fun,
we can connect, the better.
Yeah, the ARC is built entirely on science and heart. That's what we say, science and heart. So that the other thing is that when we do give some guidance, it's going to work because we know how the brain works and we know where the barriers are and we know how to whittle down the barriers before somebody's going to be able to change a behavior. But isn't this fun? Isn't it
Yeah,
fun to have such a big answer to such a big problem?
it's such a reward. It's so rewarding for me because I know where I'm out of a fish out of water, you can help a lot in those areas, because you have the tools and you provide them with people. And it's the same thing. Like people say, do you think you'll fail? Like, Michael Jordan said, I never shot it if I didn't think I was going to make it. I think so many people think I'm never going to make it. I can never do this. This is going to be too hard. I failed so many times. And that's replaying in their brain, like the mirror neurons you're talking about. When you start saying, hey, you got this, you messed up yesterday, what can we do different next time? It's
Yeah,
not defeat us. You learn. We all
yeah,
I've made dumb mistakes in life, and you go, that was a dumb move, right? maybe I shouldn't have, brought on too many people when I first started this company. Maybe I should have waited. Maybe I should have been more patient. Maybe I should have done whatever. And you go, okay, next time I know what to do. I've learned. You go through a little pain and you go, okay, I'm not going to dwell on the
Well,
pain. You learn.
especially if you have somebody to talk it over with. If they have somebody like you and they can come in and speak and you can say, I understand, that does something to the brain. That brings the idea forward. It makes it more memorable. They're more likely to be able to use it to help themselves. So just
Yeah,
having a doctor who understands is it's life-changing, life-saving.
it is. It's
So
amazing. It
yeah,
really is. And it's really the doctor by themselves can't do it. You need the patient. The patient can't
no.
do it by themselves.
And
We all
really,
need each other, right?
I have learned after 3.5 years that I can't, even the art can't do it by itself. We've got to have these alliances with you and Ben and the nutritionist. Like, I am not a nutritionist. I am not a dietitian. I can teach some fundamental techniques, some methods for managing your food. But everything I say there has to have a disclaimer under it. I'm not licensed to do this. These are just my personal ideas or something that I got out of the research. So this is a really deep disease and the consequences are extensive. So being on a team of, yes, here's your peer support group, here's your doctor, here's your exercise therapist, here's your dietitian, here's your nutritionist, here's your therapist,
Mhm.
here's your counselor, here's your social worker, here's your psychiatrist, here's your prescriber,
And
here's
if you
your
don't need one of those, you
de-prescriber.
don't do it. You go to who you need. If you're struggling with exercise, let's get you to the exercise guys. If you're struggling with food addiction, let's get you to the food addiction specialist. And I think that's so important because people get overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I think sometimes you say, okay, where am I really struggling? And just really being honest with yourself and journaling and writing things down or thinking about, go, what really matters? Why am I doing this job when I don't need the money
Yeah,
and I hate it? Why don't I find something I
yeah,
enjoy doing? Right. You and
yeah,
I can work all day because we enjoy what we do. And you see the fruit of that. You see people getting better and being happier and you're making an impact. That's what we're here for. Ultimately, it's not about, do I make 5 more bucks that day or whatever? But I think a
yeah.
lot of people are so caught up in that and they don't understand. And it's just amazing how many people are in their own prison and they have the key sitting in their pocket, right? And it's just saying, okay, let me step out of this. I don't have to be a victim of this. I think that victim mentality and that I can't do it and all. I mean, it's such a, if I say who's going to fail, that's who's going to fail. When you get that mindset of, I'm not good enough. My dad told me when I was 5 years old, I was never going to amount to anything. And you believe that
Yeah,
your entire life rather than saying,
yeah,
okay, that was wrong. I'm a pretty good
yeah.
person, right?
I just let go of one of those beliefs. My parents were so negative. I had a belief that I was expendable, that they really didn't care whether I was there or not. Incredibly painful. And after 3.5 years in the ARC, that belief finally came to the surface. And we worked these beliefs through with really easy exercises. Like, because my parents were so mean, I used to think that I had no value and I shouldn't expect to have things. But now that I've worked that belief through, I believe I am valuable. I feel valuable. I see myself as a valuable person, and I am much happier. I mean, something as simple as that can retrain the brain. Like, if you have that memory of the mean parents, instead of going over, well, I'm worthless, it goes over to, no, 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 I'm a valuable person. So it's what I'm seeing over these years is that there's a lot to unravel, but it's an unraveling process. It's not like you're going to come in on day one, your food's going to be perfect, all your relationships are going to work, and the past trauma is healed. No, if you can go slowly enough, that's another big motto: slow and steady wins the race. We
You
have
know,
all the time in the world.
gosh, I have a guy and he listens to everything I do. He came to me and I almost didn't want him because I thought he was kind of a groupie when he was very over the top. Like, I can't wait to meet you. I'm so excited. And was like, oh my gosh, this might be weird. But he came in and we started talking and, overweight, had, big beard. I couldn't see his face. And we started talking. I said, so why are you so excited to be here? And he said, well, you helped me a lot. I really appreciate it. And he said, I lost around 200 pounds. I said, what do you mean around? Like, people know how much weight they lost. And he goes, around 200. I said, I said, do you have before? I thought he was lying. He goes, do you have before pictures? Yeah, here you go. And I was like, oh my gosh, how do you not know how much you lost? He said, because my scale only went to 400. And it took me
Mm-hmm.
6 months to get to where I know. He goes, I was so happy when I could weigh myself. That perspective. And
Mm-hmm.
he's taking one step at a time. When we have a community
Mm-hmm.
walk, he's there. When we do a Zoom meeting, he's there. And
Mm-hmm.
it's one step at a time. He keeps
Mm-hmm.
walking. He changes his shoes. He logs all of his steps. There's but one step at a time. Instead of saying, "Oh my gosh, forget it. I'm over 400 pounds. I have no choice. I'm never going to be able to do this. I can't." One step at a time. And so he inspires me. And I'm like, he looks at me like, "What's the big deal? Like, doesn't this happen all the time?" Like, he doesn't appreciate it the way I appreciate it, and you would appreciate it. We say he made changes and he just took one step at a time. Because everyone
Yeah.
says, it's been a week and I lost 2 pounds. Oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. It's like, it's been 2 pounds. Did you enjoy the process? Are you feeling better? Is your energy? Oh yeah, my back doesn't hurt, my knees don't. But you see, we get so infatuated with the scale and not how we're
Yeah.
feeling and how we're interacting with everyone. That's what matters really,
This
right?
is
If
an
you're a jerk, no one
incredibly good
cares how
point.
skinny you are. Doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
we go through, and this is another unraveling, and it's a surprisingly hard one to get people to get that scale out of their house because it dictates. Now, this is going to sound funny, but in our spaces, we don't talk about weight loss and we don't talk about body shape. If somebody has an emotional issue around body shape, yes, bring that in. I am just terrified of my body shape. Okay, that we're happy to work on and reframe that thinking. But we don't do, oh, I lost 20 pounds. Because the food industry and the diet industry have very successfully framed the issue as a weight loss issue. While your brain is, malfunctioning, I shouldn't say that,
It's
but
true.
addicted,
Yeah.
they've been able to completely divert attention, just like, the tobacco industry was able to divert attention from cancer to cigarettes are sexy. It's
Yeah.
it's so
And they
so
had us doctors on there saying, look, I smoke this brand, right? And they have
yeah,
doctors that give
yeah.
credibility, you know? So
And
yeah, all
doctors
those things.
promoting candy bars.
And we have to learn from our past. That's one thing you brought up. You do a fantastic job. Any of your lectures on YouTube, please go listen, right? I'm sure they're on Diet Doctor and a bunch of different places, because when you talk about industry where they got rid of the cigarettes, they put in
Mm-hmm.
vending machines, they put in soda, they put in stuff. They knew the next addiction that's coming. Now they're all invested in vaping and medical
Oh,
marijuana, all
yeah,
that stuff, because they know where the
yeah,
money's going, where addiction
yeah,
is, right? So I
yeah,
think it's those things when you start looking and say, well, who has my vested interest? Who cares about me? Or is it
yeah.
just like I'm just my
I
money
think
is
this
what
is
matters, right?
essential also when you're talking about relieving people of guilt, to understand the role of the tobacco/food industry. That tobacco came in and took over Kraft, Nabisco, and General Foods in the space of 2 years. And that the obesity epidemic started after that. You had this high fructose corn syrup, which converts to fat very readily. But when you understand that this has been a deliberate, it's the addiction business model, it's advertising availability, affordability, age of onset, and addictive properties. When you understand that these very powerful corporations who hire addiction scientists from Harvard, that they have deliberately laid a campaign on your environment to get you and keep you addicted and progressively making it worse over time. I tell you, that is a big guilt reliever right there. I love telling that story.
Exactly. It's just like the drug dealer who gave you free samples at the beginning and then you're hooked on them. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing where you once you're addicted, you're tough. It's tough. And all of us have been through that. So Joan, you're doing some great work. I'm so excited, and I know we're going to team up to do some things. And you're
Yes.
joining me for my patients upcoming. We just spur of the moment did that in a couple of weeks. So I'm really excited, and
Yeah.
I really want to get this episode out because I know it's going to help a lot of people. A lot of people out there
Thank
struggling. It's like
you.
you're doing great
Thank you
work.
for
Yeah.
being you, Brian. Thank you for being you. And thank you for, you know, I love your story about being at the conference and staring around my table. I am desperate to be with people like you.
No, I
So,
know, I
yeah.
know, but sometimes you don't know. You think, wow, they're some of these big names, and the same thing happened with Gary Fettke, who's a big name in the low carb. I mean, I was avoiding because I'm like the poor guy. Everyone's signing his Gary Taubes, everyone's signing their autographs and talking to him, and so I'm walking by and Gary Fettke says, "Hey, Brian, do you have a minute?" I'm thinking, what? Hopefully, then you did the same thing. I was like, wow. So sometimes you just don't know, and everyone in the community has been very approachable and kind, and they want to, like, you are very generous with your time and wanting to help people, giving these lectures. We do them for free because we know we can help people. But obviously your textbook, we'll put links to your textbook and the ARC, everything you're doing, because it's going to help people. That's what we're here for, is really to help people and say, okay, what works? Not gimmicks, not crazy stuff. It's like, what really works, and how do you sustain these things? Because weight loss is not the key. It's sustaining it and really enjoying life and being able to be content and happy and all this stuff. And I think these are things that you and I kind of have, and we say, okay, how do I share that? Like you're saying, like, when you have this and you can help people, when you want to share it with everyone, you don't want to force it on them, but you want to say, oh my gosh, this is something I know you need peace, you need calm. No matter what, people ask me, can I cheat on the diet? Can I do this? And my answer a lot of times is, it depends on who you are. It depends on you. And it's really saying, this is a lifestyle long-term. Can you sustain a lifestyle that's helpful? But also, it's just more what's acceptable to you, what works, what doesn't work, right? If I tell you to be carnivore.
I'm just so delighted with what you're doing. And you made a point about the low carb community, which I just love, which is everybody's so nice. When you get those refined foods out of your food plan and you're calm all the time, it's a wonderful work environment. And I do want to say that we are training ARC managers who want to work in a therapeutic environment, a warm, calm, exciting, but anyway, so that's why the low carb community is so fun to hang out in. Is because people are not eating those very depressing, anxiety-inducing, irritable making substances.
Yeah, and everyone I have in my office now, I have a little fountain out there. You'd be proud. A little fountain out there, little, calm videos on when I don't really have a waiting room because I have a couch, but no one sits there unless they're talking to my office manager about fun stuff. They come right in and see the doctor, and it's like, I surround myself with great, kind, decent people.
Yeah,
I'm not going to have drama at work. I've done that. I'm not there anymore. I want to come and go, oh my gosh, how's the kids? How's life? How's things? And how do we support each other? You need time off. Let's be flexible. Learn life, right?
You're maintaining a therapeutic work environment.
And it's therapeutic for me. It's therapeutic for me. But it's also therapeutic.
And we wouldn't have it any other way.
But you don't want to walk into a place where they don't know who you are and no one cares. They go sit over there. We'll get you in an hour. Everyone's coughing on you and sneezing. It's like that's all part of healthcare, where we have to look and say, we could do better, guys. We could all do better. So we happen to have a model that works, and it's great. And so anyways, plugging in with you is really going to be great. And
thank you, Brian.
We'll put links to all your stuff. Anything you want to just tell people that like how they can get in touch with you for people who don't look at the show notes?
So we've just put up an umbrella website, processedfoodaddiction.com, with all of the services. There's a link right at the top to a bunch of free things that we've done. So processedfoodaddiction.com is a good place to go. Foodaddictionreset.com is where you can take the self-quiz. So this is a great relief to people. It's 11 questions. It's the same diagnostic criteria as for alcoholism. You can find out if you're experiencing the signs of processed food addiction. And when you take that quiz, you'll get on our email list, and we'll start to help you. But Brian, I think the most important thing that we can do is create and realize a vision for a team.
Yeah, absolutely. And be able to say, click here, you want this, and make it so it's user friendly so people can have that. We're on the same page, and I know Dr. Ben's on the same page. So I'm really excited about that, because I know we can impact a lot of people. So we just have to not be so busy and sit down and talk about this thing, get it done. But thank you so much for this morning. It was great spending time with you before this and spontaneously doing this. Yeah, me too. It was a great start to my day, and for everyone listening. And then, you're coming to speak with a couple of things that I'm doing. So that's great. We're going to unite. And I think there's going to be more of that coming, but everyone, please listen. I think, like I say, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, give yourself a little bit of a break, right? Like, be kind. Don't
be nice to yourself. Don't
get the negative. Don't beat yourself up. You're where you're at. Start today, get on the right path. Even if it's a long path, don't worry about the end of the journey. Just start taking a step. Like my patient lost 200 pounds. One step at a time. That's it, right? There's no magic. There's no magical formulas, but getting your brain right makes a huge difference. So, Joan, thank you so much.
Thank you. See you soon.
thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.